Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode about the movies with William Fletcher as Poodle. I'm William Fletcher, joined this week by Harry Jobson, returning again as he does.
Yeah, Backstreet is in fact back. It's good. It's good to be here, and let's sort of talk about today, William.
Today we are talking about, to tie into the upcoming release, this week's release of Thunderbolts, Marvel's Thunderbolts. We're going to be talking about Black Widow, because I think it's arguably the closest in terms of like connection to this.
Yeah,
to
you got
Thunderbolts.
you got Falcon and Winter Soldier, but that's sort of that sort of is. This is like the whole point is that it's like a bunch of ex-mercenaries. So yeah, it is the closest.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about Black Widow this week, which is an interesting film, sort of in the sense of I never saw a point in this film being made.
No, and it was like too little too late, it felt as well.
Yeah, because I remember for a long time, before this was even announced, people were talking about a Black Widow solo film. And I was very confused by this because I never felt like, while watching the films, I never thought there's a character to Black Widow to like justify a film, like a feature film runtime. I just never felt like the films had given us enough to be like, this is a movie we're gonna make in terms of like, this is, you're gonna sort of care about this. It's not in the same, Iron Man or Captain America or Thor or anything where there's a lot of character, she was always sort of a side character.
Yeah, and it also comes down to like there are a lot of and I want to get this out of the way. Firstly, at least when I'm going to speak largely in the broader terms of the MCU, and I do prefer to focus on the individual film, but it's difficult when Black Widow sort of slots itself. It's playing that Rogue One role of slotting itself into the timeline. It's one, it leads to the Marvel timeline, or at least the current Disney Marvel timeline, to be getting messy. Not as messy as like the X-Men, but it's starting to get a bit messy because this takes place at a bunch of different points, but largely in 2016, post Civil War or during Civil War, which is when it would have been a great. If this film came out in 2017. Then yeah, but then you would also be asking the questions, okay, well, where were the Thunderbolts, quote unquote, or at least Yelena or anyone during the snap? What happens during that period? Like that, it makes it messy. And then also, there are definitely ways, like there are members of the Avengers that standalone films aren't really. Look at Hawkeye. His show was good. I really enjoyed the Hawkeye show on Disney Plus. I thought it was a great way to introduce Haley Steinfeld's character and really helped sort of build the Hawkeye world a bit more instead of it being so Avengers-centric, more Kingpin, New York, Spider-Man. It felt a hometown hero sort of stuff. And you could have done Black Widow maybe in that way. I feel like it reaches the sky a little bit too much. But Black Widow, I think, could have worked better as a show. That the whole idea of like mercenary, ex-mercenary, well, like it relates, it fills that Falcon and Winter Soldier sub genre of Marvel movie where it's about like trained mercenaries and like military and the militarization of it all, and with this sort of grayer world. You have that one character that I can't remember, but she's played by Elaine from Seinfeld, and she makes appearances in Falcon and the Winter Soldier as well. And there's this whole subplot, and the whole Hawkeye's the reason that, no spoilers, but like trying to put Yelena on a Hawkeye, and that's how they're going to tie it into the Avengers. And we had like you can see the foundations being laid, but it's like this should have been brought out in 2016 or also, yeah, I have a lot to say. I do have a lot to say, but ultimately, I just don't think Black Widow's character warranted this specific feature length film. In the same way that, like, look at the Hulk. How much has it been a struggle to get a decent feature length film around Bruce Banner? And he's a major character in the Avengers. So it's not to diminish Black Widow as a character, but more so the format of her storytelling just doesn't fit a feature length film like it would maybe a 10-part series.
Exactly. I think Black Widow is a character that I just don't think you can build a film around, because to me anyway, I think movies, like Marvel movies specifically, should be kind of big event films. I don't think you can make a sort of
Have
smaller
a role
scale
player.
story.
Who's going to go watch that is my question. Who's paying, almost upwards of $30 if you're a non-member to go watch a movie and maybe get a drink, and that's not even including snacks and stuff. $20 minimum to just go watch the thing. When it's about not just Black Widow specifically, but when it's a small, not super captivating characters in what feels like a smaller Marvel movie, just because it's a bigger piece of an overall story, I really don't think it warranted. It feels like it almost could have gone direct Disney Plus. Did it?
Well, this film had faced a lot of. This was going to be like the first Marvel film coming out in 2020, when everything was then delayed to 2021. So it came out in 2021, and it went. So it went to cinemas, but it also went straight to Disney Plus. It basically put like buying it on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
Would mean you before it went on streaming. And I remember when my family did it, we had planned to go see it in the cinema, but my mum was sick, and then we also found out that it would be cheaper for us to just buy the movie on Disney Plus than go to the cinema to watch it. Like, we found that, so we were like, well, why not just stay here at home, the comfort of our own home, and watch it here? Yeah, and then instead of going out in the middle of, a pandemic, this was 2021, but, people were still getting
it was still a lockdown in this country. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were like, let's just watch it at home, and we did watch it at home. I think I'm gonna just sort of be honest and say this is one of the weakest Marvel films, if you ask me. Okay. I think that, well, first of all, I never understood why they said, I figured if they're gonna do a Black Widow film, well, because first of all, she dies in Avengers Endgame, and then they say, oh no, we're still gonna do a Black Widow film. And I'm like, okay, so it's gonna be a prequel. And in my mind, I'm like, it's gonna be set before, like, long before she's part of the Avengers and part of S.H.I.E.L.D. I hope that's what the film's gonna be. And they say, no, it's gonna take place in between Civil War and Infinity War. And I'm like, what is the...
I fully agree, because I thought the same as well. And I also thought, okay, bringing a feature-length film to a character who's already died means that we know how the story ends anyway. So it's just sort of like one of those... The whole point of a Marvel movie... Not the whole point, but at least, especially at the time and around that, the era of Marvel was, okay, what does this build to? What does this build? That became expectation, is what's the next? Why is this a great piece of the story? And this is just a piece of a story that doesn't really have anything to do with anything that was going on in the world at the time, which is, like, they mentioned giving her an X-Wing to free the other Avengers and something about, like, a little bit of the Civil War stuff, but it really largely just feels sort of like to slot it into the timeline somewhere. And the entire story, at least until you get to the ending scene where Yelena is approached and goes, your next target is Hawkeye. It's where you just sort of go, oh, that's it? Like, this entire film services to largely bring in a new character, to what bring in the Thunderbolts, who aren't really that much of like out of the Marvel teams. The Thunderbolts are one of the shitters. Like, let's not beat around the bush here. And also, this is a bit of a rant. Why Taskmaster? Like, why? I love that character so much as a Spider-Man villain, and it just seems like you just resolved the entire thing. And I just was really hoping to see Taskmaster and Spider-Man like dish it out, because the whole point of Spider-Man can like move like no one else moves, but Taskmaster can move like anyone else, and that's like the entire point. And then like I don't care that it's a woman. I really don't give a shit. But the entire like just the idea that that like not wasted on a Black Widow movie that was building to like kind of nothing. I just feel as if it was just can't really find a point to. It just seems like throwing away such a good.
Yeah, the film to me felt sort of like, because this came after, this was like the first, well, because there'd been a couple TV shows by this point. We'd had WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki. Those were the shows we'd had. And it sort of felt like Marvel wasn't really doing anything to establish new characters, because by the end of Endgame, we'd lost Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow. We lost 3 of the 6 original Avengers. So, in theory, what you should be doing with your first few films of your next phase is introducing new characters who are going to define the franchise for the next few years.
Exactly. Yep.
Doing a prequel film about a character who's dead and will no longer have any impact on this story just seems completely like, yes, you're establishing Yelena and Red Guardian and Valentina and all this, but you're not actually establishing. But these are not primary characters. These are not going to be characters who are the next Avengers team. They are going to be secondary or third characters. So it really felt to me like.
I think you're exactly right, and I think the idea that we needed an entire feature-length film to introduce what is going to be this new gen's Avengers is Black Widow, which Yelena is probably just going to end up being. Or not end up being, but the equivalent. The Thunderbolts are the equivalent. They are an assembled team. You do have, the Thunderbolts is going to have, I can't remember his name, but he was like his name was John Walker, the new Captain America. Yeah. I loved his character. The idea of a flawed Captain America, I thought was kind of awesome. I really liked his character in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
I thought he was the best part of that show.
And he absolutely was, and Wyatt Russell's a great actor.
I didn't like what they did with him in the final episode, though.
And I also agree, and the idea that it's going to be a team with him and Bucky and even though I thought I get it, it's comic accurate, but I thought Bucky would work. I don't know. It's just like I liked the duo he built with Falcon, also Captain America currently. It was sort of like a buddy comedy, like a dark one, but it felt like a bit. Obviously, they were dealing with much more, but they had a good chemistry. So this new team that they're bringing through, which is sort of going to be a bit more of a side team, that feels a lot more of a side team. Seems like we needed an entire film. Look at Black Widow's character when she was brought through. She was like in Iron Man 3. And what I'm going to do is look at Marvel films that have introduced new teams. We'll take the concept of introducing new teams.
All right,
the Avengers,
I'll get the list up. I'll get the list up as well, so we.
Yeah, but I'm going to go off top of dome sort of stuff. The Avengers was built off individual films, but they were new introduced characters. Thor, Iron Man, Captain America films that sort of shaped the Avengers and how it was. Yes, but the Avengers was they were the franchise team. And then do you know what brought out how they did the other team that wasn't the franchise team, but had its own stylistic choices, its own attitude, just Guardians of the Galaxy. But they just made a Guardians movie. And they just did it in one film.
Yes.
And it was like, it worked really well and everyone loved it. And that's the way you do it. Do you know why? Because the Guardians aren't the Avengers. They're important and you love the individual characters. Man, I still get teary in the end of Guardians 2. Guardians 3 is a great film as well. The Guardians series is a great trilogy. Yeah, and you have characters that come through and add in characters, like Thor, and it builds from its own reputation that it's built with just one film. The reason they didn't need all like a film introducing Star-Lord and a film introducing Gamora and a film, and then like in the Gamora film, there's a post-credit scene where they mention, her sister, and it's all this sort of shit. Not just make the film. And it's the same with the Thunderbolts, for example. If they just came out with the Thunderbolts film, I think that would have been fine, especially at the back of Winter Soldier. Like that would have been, because look, Wyatt Russell, who plays John Walker, and Sebastian Stan were both in the Guardians. I think Red Hulk in this? Harrison Ford's Red Hulk?
I don't know. I thought he, because it is his it's named after him, but I don't know if he's been confirmed. I wouldn't be surprised if he is, but I don't know if there's been anything officially confirmed of him being in it.
It just does feel as if it could have been the Black Widow film does not a whole lot but give us a slight backstory on some characters that are going to be in this film. And considering on how much of an integral time in which this took place during Civil War was crazy in the Marvel film at time. Everything was going on, and it just seemed like it needed it was non-needed. If it was to come out, bring it out in 2017 or during that Civil War run and go, hey, we have a Black Widow movie. You put 2 and 2 together, because it wasn't always spelt out for us. Back in the day, you would go, oh, Iron Man movie and a Thor movie and a Captain America movie. I know from prior knowledge that all these characters are in the Avengers, so there must be an Avengers movie coming up. Instead of being, hey, we're doing a Thunderbolts movie, this is what's going to lead into it, and then hardly lead into it, just seems a bit shit. And that's become the new Marvel formula, and it's really disappointing.
I'm doing some reading about this film's development. So Kevin Feige apparently met with Scarlett Johansson to discuss the direction of Black Widow film in October 20. So that's when they started talking about making this, and then they were apparently began looking for female directors sort of beginning of 2018. Apparently they hired their director in July of 2018, and then they did. Well, that's not a good sign. I just read here that someone was hired to rewrite the script in February 2019. That's not a good sign.
We're looking at the current timeline in what this film leads into and where Marvel is going. And Fantastic Four seems exciting until you realize, oh, wow, it's Pedro Pascal. He's in fucking everything. Like that one Apple ad that keeps coming up on everything. I don't know. I like Florence Pugh as a character. Don't get me wrong, Scarlett Johansson was also a massive actress at the time that she was playing Black Widow. But it just feels, I don't know, maybe I'm picking, being too picky, being too about it. But as someone who is a big Marvel fan, seen every film and every TV show except She-Hulk, because I'm not watching that shit, in the Marvel, I guess, universe, or that current MCU, it just seems a step below. And again, it is hard to criticize these films, and I'm not playing that, oh, I'm a straight white man and people are just going to get mad at me because whatever else, because I don't really care. But like it is difficult to critique these films because it is really nothing to do with the character of Black Widow, the quality that Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh and David Arbor and everyone plays these characters to, but it's just strictly and largely due to the Marvel or Disney or the production company in a whole for not looking at, okay, how is this going to fit? Because when it doesn't fit in the larger puzzle that it's supposed to, in its series, in its world, then it makes it a lot harder to appreciate as a standalone film. Look at Thor Ragnarok. It's tied, like they bring the Hulk back in it, and that's cool. And it's like important, and it leads obviously directly into Infinity War. But it's not like it's not when you watch that film, do you really think that it's building to something? But it's still a great piece of the overall puzzle because it does things well, and it's placed at a perfect time, and everyone sort of knew what was about to go down, so that when you get to the end of the movie and Thanos' big ship pops up, you're like, oh wow. You don't get that with this little, hey, go after Hawkeye. It just felt it felt this worked in 2009, so let's give it another go.
It sort of felt to me like what Marvel's been doing a lot more recently is they have these end credit scenes, but they're only there to sort of introduce these new actors, and they're big, like, oh, Charlize Theron at the end of Doctor Strange 2, or Harry Styles at the end of Eternals. Like they have all these.
But anyway.
Yeah, it just sort of feels like, I mean, post 2019, like Endgame. I mean, I know you hate Far From Home with a passion,
it's
but
a shit film. Okay.
But I think that Marvel felt like they had a plan for the Infinity Saga. Like they knew what they were doing. From the beginning, they knew what this would tell, and then just since then, they've just been sort of fucking about. And this Black Widow film is just a symptom of like, we don't need this film here. Like this film, it does not add anything that would not have been in a different show. It's like I don't see the point in this being made. Like I'm just looking at the MCU films that have been made post Far From Home, and it's just like they haven't really followed up on any of these. Like we haven't gotten anything to do with Shang-Chi. The Eternals, they haven't done anything with
Shang-Chi. By the way, we haven't spoken. Shang-Chi, so good. But anyway.
Yeah.
That's how you introduce a character. You make the movie about it. This film could have just been called Black Widows and been almost entirely about Yelena, and I would have been fine with that.
It just, this movie, it's completely pointless. So there's no reason for it to exist. I'm never going to be sitting down and being like, I want to watch a Marvel movie today. It's like, I'm not going to pick Black Widow and be like, yeah, let's watch that movie again. Because, like...
I'm almost exclusively watching Iron Man or Spider-Man when I watch Marvel movies. The occasional, like, Guardians. Guardians is really good because it sort of stands in all iterations alone. Like they're sort of they're
the
largely
self-contained. Self-contained standalone films. Yeah,
I know exactly what you mean, and in the same sort of. Oh well, I guess. And do you know like who? Do you have up who the current head director on the Thunderbolts was?
let me. I don't know how to like the
Jake
director.
Schreier.
Yeah, Jake Schreier is the director. I don't know if I've seen any of his. He's only got 2 other films credited to his name, which is
what are they? Are they Paper Towns and?
Robot and Frank and Paper Towns. Yeah, I've not seen either of
Okay.
those films. What to uh, make of those?
This is something this is something I want to touch on, and yeah, again, I could be saying this completely unjustly because I haven't. I know of Paper Towns, but I haven't really like sat down and watched either film, so I don't know what his stylization is like. I know that he's done a lot of music videos, but I think when you look at James Gunn's Guardian, and I keep comparing this to Guardians because Guardians is the great example of how to build a team. Even the Avengers, like, look at Hawkeye. Hawkeye is the closest character to Black Widow in terms of, I guess, overall importance. And I know that sounds mean, but how many people were sitting down reading the Hawkeye comic growing up? No, they were reading Avengers, and yeah, he was in it, and it sort of is got this grittier underworld style that is kind of cool. But he didn't need a standalone film to be introduced. What was he in, Captain America? Or was he in
Thor.
Was he also in Iron Man 3? He was in Thor, yeah. Yeah,
Hawkeye was.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he like made an appearance in these films. Didn't really have a standalone one, but by the time we got to Avengers, it didn't really matter because we knew him. And that's really what you should have been doing with these characters, with a plan from the beginning. You're exactly right. It seems like they didn't really plan for life after Endgame. And we're really starting to feel that now because at the start, a bunch of new content was coming out, like WandaVision, like the Eternals, and it felt like there was some sort of direction to do with, Colossals and what this was building to, and slightly Kang with the Loki TV series, which is great, and it felt like it was building to something epic, even though it felt like a lot of projects were weaker. Like Moon Knight, and I remember seeing that got a lot of criticism, but looking back now, it's got when you rewatch Moon Knight, it's actually a really great series. But all these characters that were first brought through that you thought, oh, this is building to something great. Fast forward 4 years, and we've seen zero fruit. We saw a new Captain America film come out that was like not well received at all. We saw a new Thor come out that it didn't really build into anything. It was more of wrapping up a story. We had the Thunderbolts brought through that weren't like really mentioned or cared about, and that was through this Black Widow film, but it just did really feel like we were building to something, and now there's none of that. I don't know if you've got that same idea, but it did. There was something going on, and it seems like they've lost all direction now, and they're just going, oh, let's see if they like Thunderbolts, and then if they don't like Thunderbolts, then hopefully they'll like Fantastic Four. If they don't like Fantastic Four, then I guess we'll wait till the new Spider-Man comes out, and people will watch that because it's Spider-Man, and it's just this thought stream of throwing whatever they can at the wall to see what sticks. And that's how Thunderbolts and honestly this Black Widow film feels. And it is a shame because you could have done a film, you could have done a semi-led, Black Widow, ex-Hawkeye, film or some way in which you could have these characters become more important than they are, like in the grander scheme of the MCU. But it just I struggle to see how it's able to, or how they think it's able to pull this major audience that is going to allow them to sort of build on this story. So when they don't, and they're just given to a team of writers that say, hey, make the Black Widow movie, and they butcher Taskmaster, and they largely butcher the timing of it, and they butcher the planning, and they butcher even like a lot of the dialogue feels incredibly stiff and unnatural, and I feel like a lot of the characters don't even really have chemistry on screen together. It unfortunately takes who should be an incredibly powerful female icon into the spotlight of a bad film. And I think Captain Marvel was similar, except I liked Captain Marvel a bit more.
Yeah, I didn't mind Captain Marvel. I thought Captain Marvel was all right.
But I
Go
just
listen
thought
to
that
Captain
gets
Marvel.
mentioned a lot in the conversation. You say, "Oh, Black Widow movie's bad," and you'd be, "Oh, but that's just because it's Black Widow," and it's like, no, well, it's not because it's Black Widow. It's because everything that's happening around Black Widow, and also a little bit because it's Black Widow, because she ultimately is a side character. Again, it would be the same if there was a Hawkeye feature length.
Yeah, exactly. I think like yeah, I wouldn't need a Hawkeye film. I wouldn't need a Nick Fury film, you know. I think TV shows would work great for those characters. I mean, we haven't really talked too much about the plot of this film, but
Oh, we haven't. Yeah, we've just been talking about the larger sort of landscape of the MCU.
yeah. I mean, but does it I mean, because at the end of the day, there isn't really any consequences from anything that happens in the film.
Well,
Because
yeah,
you know Black Widow doesn't die yet,
yeah, and
and
what
like
Taskmaster is like healed, I guess.
yeah,
Like they fight in the
there's
air and
a
survive, even though
oh
they're
like
normal
I mean
human
there's that
beings.
horrendously bad bit of CGI where Yelena like hits something like she puts her like two things together to blow up and she like hits it on this thing to explode and she gets sent
Yeah,
flying backwards or something. And it's like you've had this film in post production since like 2019. You've had like an extra year of post production. Well, why is the CGI not better? Like it just feels like you've had so much extra time to fix up the CGI, you know, a year or whatever to fix the CGI. It should look better than how it looks.
it is shocking for what it is. Like it, and again that sort of falls under my argument that it's like it almost feels like Marvel just gave it to the B team. I have not written a feature length film. I've not helped produce, so I'm not coming from a point of higher criticism, but just as your viewer and as someone who's slightly educated when it comes to film, not nearly as much as my friend across the border here, but
Are
I
you
just
talking
find
about
that
me? Am I your?
I'm
Am I
talking about
your?
you. You're the friend
Yeah.
across the border. But I
Mm.
feel I feel so much. No, but it just seems like it doesn't even try to do these characters the justice it needs. Less like, oh, another. It's disappointing. It's disappointing
Mhm.
to see that, because the Marvel that I knew, the Marvel that we that would put its whole everything into each film because they knew that it mattered, and they were almost like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is just to lead up the Thunderbolts, and the Thunderbolts are going to be whatever. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not gonna lie, I'm a big Marvel fan. I didn't even know that Thunderbolts were releasing. I'm frustrated as a fan who used to see a feature length Marvel film about an Avenger and think, yeah. And now I remember when this came out, when Black Widow came out, and I was like, eh. But yeah, to get onto the plot, it largely, again, is centric about early childhood. I can't even think. I've been saying Yelena so much, I've almost lost it. Like,
I was
I
wondering
keep
what
just
name you were
wanting to
trying
say
to get.
Scarlett Johansson because I literally just can't. No matter what role she plays, she's always Scarlett Johansson. Jojo Rabbit, Jewish Scarlett
Yeah.
Johansson. But
Mm.
German Scarlett Johansson. Ally, but
Mhm.
German Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, it follows them through early childhood and how they're part of this, like, you know, sort of mismatched surrogate family of agents, spies that anti-shield,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, we know that she ends up with shield though, so this is inconsequential. It just everything builds to this. Yeah, okay, she was anti-shield once, and we knew that. And don't get me wrong, I like the concept of the Red Room and how like freeing the other Black Widows and everything to sort of that builds from that when it comes to like rights and especially younger kids and what they shouldn't be subject to and like and the argument for that. I think that's really powerful, but it's just done so rushed. And the Red Room's actually big space station in space up in the sky, and like and it's like, well, who cares? Who cares? It felt useless and looked goofy, but like a lot of the time, it just also feels like if this is such a, I understand that it's secretive, but it was such a vital thing, then why didn't we hear about it till 2021 in the films? If it was important, it would have come out, and that's ultimately what I'm saying. Is everything in this film, even the stories between the Black Widows, the powerful like drive of the characters, the incredibly shallow and just annoying taskmaster that is portrayed in this film. The little battle they have or whatever, which honestly just felt so needless. Was washed out by the fact that it came out in 2021 and was sort of, I guess, I don't know what the word would be, rather than sucked dry of any meaning, because we already know what happens before and after. Yeah, it makes it. I understand it's telling an individual story. The story feels, and as I was saying before about the writing, the story feels shallow. Like, and I do. Is there any parts in this film that you find any real depth with, whether it's an emotional connection between characters or anything like that, or does, at least to me, a lot of the performances, again, I'm not Scarlett Johansson or Florence Pugh. I wish I was. I'm not David Harbour. Wish I was. I'm not Rachel Weisz, and I'm not like, but I wish I was. And these are all great, great actors. But it felt, at least whether it was chemistry on screen or just the overall basis of the narrative, it felt really stale. And I think that was because of the fact that it got, or all of its content got sucked out from the larger Marvel cinematic universe.
It was weird because I didn't care about Black Widow as a character in this film. I mean, I never really did, to be honest. She was one of the least interesting characters to me, and I think that
she's a little two-dimensional.
Yeah, I was far more interested in Yelena and Red Guardian as characters. I think they had a lot of character and a lot of personality to them. Which just felt kind of weird to me because they're not the main character. Like, they're not.
You honestly could have called this film Red Guardian and made it about Red Guardian, and that would have been, or even again about Yelena, and that's what I was saying before. But I agree.
It just sort of never felt to me like. Yeah, it just sort of felt like this is kind of why I didn't care for a movie, because she's a very uninteresting character and they're not giving Scarlett Johansson material to work with to sort of make up for the fact that she's not an interesting character. It felt very sort of, they just sort of missed the mark in terms of like what they were trying to achieve. Because I never really cared about what was, because it was like, I know that she doesn't die, so why should I care about any of this? So it I don't know. To me, it just sort of felt like I don't. It just is it's a very pointless film, and it's not even interesting enough for me to be like, this is still good. Even if the film doesn't need to exist, it's still interesting because it's not. there are some sort of films or Marvel films that I can't think of any, but I feel like there's been times where I've watched a Marvel like, yeah, that was, that film didn't really need to exist, but I did quite enjoy watching it and I thought it was good. Whereas this just felt like, what are we doing here, guys? This doesn't.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That was me with Eternals. And I understand that a lot of people didn't like the Eternals, but I had fun. I watched it and I was like, this could have been a lot worse than it was. Yeah, it was shallow and it was like sort of baseless. And I've been using shallow a bit. But like, and yeah, I understand it was like building something in the Celestials and all that like planeting stuff. And like, yeah, it was like a cool team of a bunch of people. But at the same time, honestly, I think the last time I remember watching a film and thought, oh, this didn't really like Marvel film and didn't really need to exist, probably would have been the Eternals. I feel like there's a way you could have brought them in without the film. That being said, I thought it was alright, but that's just me personally.
I didn't care for the Eternals, and they haven't really done anything with them sort of since. I mean, presumably because the film didn't do massively well, and I don't think people generally cared for it. So I don't know what the future holds for those characters.
Which is a shame because there was, I don't know, I understand again there wasn't a positive response, and I've been known to have very contentious opinions about Marvel films. There are some that are hated by a lot of people that I actually quite like. And there are some that are liked by a lot of people that I don't really
Thor:
like.
Love and Thunder, if I recall.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Thor: Love and Thunder. I thought it was okay.
I like it too,
I really didn't think it was. I really did not think it was that bad. Like, yeah, it was a bit too much, but it was just as too much as Deadpool and Wolverine was too much. Because rewatching Deadpool and Wolverine, you sort of go, oh, that is a lot. Like, there's a lot of jokes. But like, and it can become quite overbearing. And that was the same thing that happened with Thor: Love and Thunder. I really just think, it was maybe done a bit too much, but like, the CGI of the kid's face through the fucking, oh my god.
Yeah, I can't defend that.
That was undefendable. But other than that, I thought it was a fine film. And yeah, I have spoken about that. But Black Widow was the first film to kick off Phase 4. Phase 4, which is the new world order from because you'd think it actually ended with Endgame, but Phase 4 actually ended with Spider-Man Far From Home. This is the new world post-Endgame. This is what we're building to.
Yeah.
And it kicks off with Black Widow. Okay, so you think, all right, as again, disappointing as the film was, it was designed to lead into Thunderbolts. So you think either Thunderbolts is going to open Phase 5 or Thunderbolts is going to end Phase 4. That's what you think, right? You go, okay, we'll wrap up the phase with the Thunderbolts. No. No, it was... We then had Shang-Chi, then Eternals, then Spider-Man, then Doctor Strange, then Thor, and then Black Panther, and then 8 different separate television series. And
way too many. And
then now we're in Phase 5, and we had Ant-Man and Guardians and the Miss Marvel, the Marvels, and the new Captain America, and now we get Thunderbolts.
Yeah, it's 4 years after.
Also, according to... Hold up. I'm just going to click onto this. According to the Wikipedia, apparently there are 9 new seasons of television series for this phase.
What? That's...
And then actually Phase 6, we're actually in Phase 6 now.
So
Phase 4 is going to... No, Thunderbolts will end Phase 5. So we began Phase 4, which, oh my god, all this phase stuff. It also looked like way more exciting when Marvel did it with the big timeline. Reading it on the page there makes it seem so lame.
Yeah, it does not seem as exciting.
Phase 5, the last film is Thunderbolts, and then Phase 6 kicks off with Fantastic Four, and then Avengers Doomsday, the new Spider-Man, then Avengers, and then apparently the fourth and fifth saga, the fourth and fifth phases, so what we just went through, was known as the Multiverse Saga. Which, and I just ask you, except for some shadows, except for Spider-Man, which, again, came out... Oh, no, Spider-Man makes sense. And Doctor Strange, and Quantumania, and Loki. Every other film had nothing to do with multiverse or like anything, and didn't really connect at all. Have you felt any connection between these? Have you felt any building between these films? Because I haven't.
No, this is one of the big problems with this multiverse phase, is there hasn't felt like, oh, we're building to... Like, in the Infinity Saga, they were introducing, the Infinity Stone. Every couple films, there'd be a new Infinity Stone. There'd be the Tesseract.
And you'd have a post-credit scene of a really purple Thanos, and then a slightly less purple Thanos, until you get to, like, almost just a tint purple.
Yeah, exactly. They had, they were built, we haven't had... Kang has only been in, what? The Loki show.
He's no longer the overarching villain anyway.
Yeah, I know, but when they were building to him, did he only do the Loki show and Ant-Man?
He did
3?
Loki and Ant-Man, and...
Did he appear in something else that I'm just misremembering? It doesn't look like he was. I'm looking at Jonathan Major's Wikipedia page, and it looks like he only did Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and Loki. And
do you want to know the most frustrating thing? And this is just personally for me. Shang-Chi felt more as if that was the Phase 4 kickoff, personally at least. Because Black Widow, again, because that's the film we're talking about today, even though anytime we do a Marvel movie, it's usually just sort of a rant about Marvel currently, because you can't really disconnect the two. Black Widow did nothing. Like, it did nothing to the point where Shang-Chi felt like the kickoff. It was introducing a new character. It felt fresh. It was an entirely new story. It was incredibly cool, besides Awkwafina. Sort of told a bit more about the Ten Rings, which, terrorist group, and also, like, that was what the Ten Rings are based off, and it was kind of like a cool wink back, and you think, all right, so this is where we're building through. We're building into the newer age. And then just nothing came from that. Not a single thing has related to Shang-Chi. The Doctor Strange and WandaVision, Doctor Strange specifically should have had him in it. Considering at the end of Shang-Chi, he, like, goes with Wong and stuff. And Bruce Banner and, like, She-Hulk and all of that. And I just start to, like... I'm like, they're taking way too long. Like, I was... What year did Endgame come out? 2020?
2019.
Okay. So I was 16, 15.
Yeah.
I'm like 22 this year. And I've just, like, nothing cool. Not one cool fucking... There's been some cool shows, but, like, it's been 6 years. It's been 6 years since we were supposed to step into this new world. And... It just felt, especially Black Widow, this film felt like it was just like, hey, we're doing another woman as the lead. Give us money. And even if the story's bad, and even if we, like, butcher the sort of character a bit, and you already know what's going to happen, so we know you're not interested. But hey, Scarlett Johansson. I don't know. I really can't see the... Like, But, like, listen to it. Like, I'm struggling to justify it because it's like, I really hope I'm gonna watch Thunderbolts, and I really hope that it's not awful. But if this is the precedent that Thunderbolts sets, then yeah. And I also like, I want to mention having Captain America, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and having Black Widow and having this all tie into the Thunderbolts is a bad idea. Because the best way to build or to introduce a new team is to pick a director, have that director be the director of everything to do with that team, and have that director be stylized. Again, look at James Gunn. That's an incredibly stylized sort of adaptation of Guardians. It's completely unapologetic. It's cool, and it's fun, and it's colorful, and it's different. And look at the Russo brothers and what they did with Avengers, and how grand and how experimental yet fun it still is, and how it really makes storylines from certain comic books digestible in a way that can be just a feature-length film. And then, like, the Thunderbolts, I believe, at least Captain, if you look at the director for the Thunderbolts, he did not have a hand in either Black Widow, nor did they influence in Captain America, in Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, what is going to represent the Thunderbolts? What are they going to be? Well, what's the style they're going to be? Because if it's going to be this Black Widow film that we're talking about today, then I don't even know if I will watch it.
It doesn't feel like any of it matters that much. It just sort of feels like Black Widow. The film just doesn't do anything for me. Like, it's I don't even think it's like especially bad. It's just so utterly pointless as a film and like needing to be made. Feels it's, I don't like saying that, but just watching it, I just don't care about this film, and that's almost worse to me, I think. Just being so so disenfranchised with it. And with Marvel in general, because I was a big fan of their output, in sort of around, for a lot of the Infinity Saga. Phase 3 is for the most part, that's a very, very good run of films in there. You had Avengers, you had Infinity War, you had Endgame, you had Black Panther, you had Thor Ragnarok, you had Civil War, Guardians 2, such a really strong run of films. Now it's just like, I don't really care about what they're doing, or it's not to the degree I used to. So it's just sort of like, I can't, this film, Black Widow, just doesn't. It's one of the least memorable films in the franchise.
There is almost nothing about it. I got myself, imagine bringing in a new team. Let's, for example, we'll speak on the Thunderbolts. Again, haven't seen it, hasn't come out yet. Hard to speak on, hard to criticize. But if we're going, again, this is more of a critique of Black Widow, if anything. But imagine if Black Widow and the Thunderbolts and everything to do with that was... give me a stylized director. Like Edgar Wright or something. Here's a particular, I guess, cadence and tempo to his films. The way he uses color and largely the sort of camera work, the decision between shots, and how each frame is meticulously serves a purpose. And his team is the Thunderbolts, and that's what you play with, and that's what you do. It would then give it so much more importance and not only attraction, but in weight within what it exists within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it's now got a personality, because the Thunderbolts never really did anyway. Again, they're a ragtag team. They're the Marvel Suicide Squad. And whether or not, that's a good thing, but look at James Gunn's Suicide Squad. And again, I call back to James Gunn, Guardians. But what he did with Suicide Squad, considering how the original went, was phenomenal. That's what a really great director can do if you give them the sort of licenses to be able to, and the freedom to be able to be creative. And there is not one single thing about this Black Widow film that is creative, except maybe they creatively found a way to butcher Taskmaster. And I'm holding on to that because it's such a cool Spider-Man villain, and it was a waste Black Widow movie, and it just like Taskmaster's so cool as a character. The concept of Taskmaster is awesome, and it's up there with those characters that get little recognition, like the Chameleon, for example, that are and should be significantly more powerful, and also fit that bill of those villains such as Doctor Doom, Taskmaster, Chameleon, and these more sort of down to earth, or down to earth is the perfect word for it, because these are all villains that aren't from other planets, that aren't, galaxies or universes or multiverses. Like, no, this is someone from New York. This is someone from this world, and it helps keep these storytelling sort of themes grounded. Except Black Widow did the opposite. There's a fight scene where they're falling for one way too long. I don't care where you're coming from. Yeah, and I just again, I've done a lot of whinging, and if I am going to say something positive, some of the fight choreography I think is done really well, and that's a credit. I think there are points where it isn't. Again, you mentioned just the CGI of the Yelena blowing up the thing with the sticks, but a lot of, did I already mention the fighting? I can't really.
Yes, I mean, do you want to put a rating on this, or is there any sort of thing you would like to say before we finish, or
wrap up? I'm gonna give this 3 Black Widows out of 10 Black Widows, and I've given worse films better, but there's a standard, and it's not a universal standard. It's a Marvel Cinematic Universal standard, and this just is below the bar. And for that, I give it a 3.
I mean, I give it a 6. Yeah, I give it a 6. That's arguably a bit generous because I don't really care for it, but I don't think it's like bad really. I just sort of didn't see. I don't really care about it that much.
Yeah, but that's what makes it bad to me, because I should care, because this is something that I love. Yeah, but so yeah, I feel like the whole point, especially if you're going to spend $80 million, what was the budget?
So a ridiculously high amount from my memory. Let me just get the Wikipedia page up. Apparently, $288.5 million. Fucking Jesus Christ!
Oh wow, it's a 2 now. That was way too much money for this. But that's what I'm saying. If you're spending more money, then there are people in the U. If you're spending more money, then that's 3 times the biggest lotto like Australia puts on every now and then. That's like 3 times that amount. That's 3 lotteries they just put on. Like 300, borderline $300 million for something that, again, who studied film, who at least should care about film, and for someone such as myself, who is a certified little bit of a Marvel fan, my friend, and we just say, oh yeah, we don't care because it sucks, or we don't care, it doesn't do anything to make us care, even though they spent $300 million on it, is unjustifiable in my book. If it was 80 million, I would have been like, that seems like excessive.
Jeez.
Yeah, 5, you think, oh, that's not that much. That's $500,000. I have maybe 5,000. Like, that is so much money.
It's a ridiculous sum of money to be spending on, like, yeah, it's unjustifiable. Like, it's, yeah, unbelievable. I don't know if that's including, like, marketing, because I'm looking at the list of the highest grossing films here, and it says Black Widow cost 248 million, which is
Okay,
still unbelievable.
my personal opinion, I understand CGI costs a lot of money.
Mm.
Anything over $100 million
Mm-hmm.
is too much. And again, this is going to sound like, okay, look, Actors Association, don't come after me when I say this. Actors, at least in my opinion, and I understand we're saying this on a film podcast, so I am on the record, are by and large overpaid. At least
I think
for
some can be, yeah.
some. Yeah, okay, no, yeah, you're absolutely right. Per case by case basis, there are some actors, and again, I don't know how much of this budget went into paying them, are being overpaid. I think writers deserve most of the pay, and obviously a lot of the
Oh, but
pay
yeah, writers get
goes
paid fucking nothing. They
scraps.
really, yeah, get
Considering,
paid fucking peanuts, yeah. Before we wrap up, did you see the trailer for Fantastic Four, the new one that came out like relatively recently?
no, I was saving myself.
Okay, well then, never mind then. I was gonna say it
No,
actually
I'm
doesn't
gonna watch it.
look very. I'm still very concerned about this Fantastic Four, though, to be honest, because I'm just so
Are
worried
you
that it
talking about the
won't be
one
good.
about a week ago?
Yeah, there was one that was like a week or something ago.
Oh, because I'd only watched the original teaser from 2 months ago, but I had
Oh
heard
yeah,
about the new.
yeah. No, there was a new one like a week and a half ago, something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I do want to just mention, as it is our opportunity to speak on Marvel, and I guess Fantastic Four before we do an episode or something like that. The a lot of the feedback about the design of Ben Grimm is completely unjustified. He looks awesome, and that's just my. I just want anyone who thinks that he looks bad is an idiot, and that's my two cents.
I'm used now that I've seen this newer trailer. He doesn't actually look that bad. I didn't
He
on the first
looks
trailer. I was
so
yeah.
much better than the what was it, like, the 2014 Fantastic Four, Fan Four stick, where he looks
Yeah.
so much better, because that guy looks like Korg, like, not like it. And yeah, I think again the early 2000s Fantastic Four has a real soft spot in my heart. But yeah, I think he looks
Mm.
fine, and that's just my personal. Yeah, and I also, before we say goodbye, you see how they're just doing a Fantastic Four movie, and they're not giving us like a Reed Richards movie where we have to see all the
Mm.
backstory, and then how he joins the
Mm.
Fantastic Four. You see how they're just doing it? Yeah, it's almost like you
Yeah.
could have done that with Thunderbolts, Marvel, and you didn't have to do Black Widow 4 years before this one came out, 2 phases ago. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous. But anyway.
But yeah, we will talk about Thunderbolt in the review of the year because we will both have seen it. But, yeah, I mean, is there any final things you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
I would say, if you haven't seen it, don't stress. Well, and this is my word because I know a lot of people that are trying to sort of. Well, I have family members even that are looking at sort of sitting down and watching the Marvel movies in order and getting all of that. There is content that you can just skip without any repercussions of being misinformed.
Mm-hmm.
That, because it is a lot of content, so there are definitely skips throughout the series. This is one of them.
Mm.
This is a skip. But hey, thank you, William, for having me on. If you ever want any more negative opinions about things that disappoint me, please feel free to give me a message.
But yeah, thank you all for listening to this week's episode. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.